She thought conversation was enough until the human taught her desire. The meeting of minds, the crystalline spires of Viridian Prime caught the light of 3 suns, refracting it into patterns that would mesmerize any first-time visitor. Lyra. Taesang stood in the observation hall with the same composed grace she brought to all her duties, watching the human transport vessel descend through the prismatic atmosphere. As cultural liaison, she had welcomed 17 research teams in the past cycle. This 18th should be no different. The humans filed through the acclimatization chamber, their faces showing the expected wonder at Viridian architecture. Lyra began her standard greeting, outlining protocols and cultural guidelines with practiced efficiency. Her voice remained measured, professional, designed to put the visitors at ease while maintaining appropriate boundaries. "Excuse me," a voice interrupted politely. "I have a question about something you mentioned earlier." Lyra turned her attention to the speaker, a human male with warm brown eyes and an open expression that somehow conveyed both respect and genuine curiosity. The identification tag read, Dr. Marcus Chun, Linguistic and Cultural Research. "Yes, Dr. Chun?" She responded. "You mentioned that Viridians prioritize logical clarity in communication. But doesn't the structure of your language itself suggest an underlying emotional component? The way your words for understanding and connection share root phonemes, for instance." Lyra paused. Most humans asked about technology or requested modifications to their living quarters. This question delved into philosophy, into the nuances of her culture that even some Viridians never considered. "An interesting observation," she replied, her tone warming slightly despite herself. "Our linguistic scholars debate this point. Some argue the shared roots are coincidental. Others suggest that ancient Viridians understood connection differently than we do now." Marcus smiled, and something about that expression created an unexpected flutter in Lyra's chest. "I'd love to discuss this further, if you have time. I'm fascinated by how different civilizations conceptualize the relationship between thought and feeling." Over the following days, Lyra found herself allocating more time to Marcus's inquiries than protocol strictly required. They met in the observation hall, discussing philosophy over crystalline tea. He shared human poetry, attempts to capture feelings that transcended verbal description. When he recited a piece about longing, about the ache of connection desired, but not yet achieved, Lyra felt something shift inside her. "Does this make sense to you?" Marcus asked gently, noticing her thoughtful silence. "I'm not certain," Lyra admitted, a rare confession of uncertainty, "but I find myself wanting to understand." Marcus's eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Sometimes understanding requires more than words," he said softly. The conversation continued, but beneath it, Lyra sensed something else in undercurrent she couldn't name, pulling her toward territory both foreign and strangely compelling. For the first time in her carefully ordered life, pure logic felt insufficient. The awakening, the research compound schedule structured time into efficient blocks, but Lyra found herself rearranging her duties to accommodate more frequent meetings with Marcus. She told herself it was professional necessity. He required extensive cultural context for his linguistic studies. Yet she couldn't quite explain why she chose her most elegant robes for these sessions, or why her pulse quickened when she spotted him crossing the courtyard. Marcus brought new dimensions to their discussions. He introduced her to human music, playing soft melodies on a portable device that somehow conveyed yearning without a single word. He showed her paintings where color and form expressed what language could not. Each encounter peeled back another layer of Lyra's carefully maintained composure. "Your people aren't without emotion," Marcus observed one evening as they sat in the glass-domed botanical garden, surrounded by bioluminescent flora. "You've simply learned to channel it differently. We consider excessive emotion a distraction from clarity." Lyra replied, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. What if emotion is its own form of clarity? Marcus shifted closer, ostensibly to point out a constellation rising beyond the dome. His shoulder brushed hers, and Lyra's breath caught. The contact lasted only a moment, but it sent unexpected sensations radiating through her body. She became acutely aware of his proximity, the warmth emanating from him, the subtle scent that was distinctly human, distinctly his. When she turned to respond, she found his face closer than she'd anticipated, his eyes reflecting the garden's soft luminescence. She began, then faltered. For someone who made her living through precise communication, words suddenly felt inadequate. Marcus didn't retreat. Instead, his hand found hers, fingers curling gently around her palm. "It's okay," he murmured. "Not everything needs to be explained immediately." But Lyra wanted explanation. She needed to understand this pull, this magnetic draw that made her hyper-aware of every detail about him. The way his voice dropped slightly when he spoke to her alone. The attentiveness in his gaze that made her feel truly seen, not just observed. The smile that seemed reserved specifically for their private moments. "Marcus," she said carefully, "I find myself experiencing sensations I don't fully comprehend. When you're near, my thought patterns become less ordered. My focus shifts. Is this," she paused, searching for the right term, "is this what humans call attraction?" His thumb traced gentle circles on her hand, and she shivered. "What does it feel like to you?" "Like standing at the edge of a precipice," Lyra admitted, uncertain whether to step back to safety or lean forward into the unknown. "And which do you want to do?" Lyra met his eyes, finding warmth and patience there, but also something deeper, a reflection of her own unnamed longing. "I want to lean forward," she whispered, "but I don't know how." Marcus lifted their joined hands, pressing his lips softly to her knuckles. The gesture sent electricity through her nerves. "Then let me show you," he said, "if you'll trust me." Trust. Such a logical concept, yet what she felt transcended mere intellectual confidence. This was something elemental, a willingness to explore vulnerability she'd never permitted herself before. "Yes," Lyra breathed, and in that single word, everything shifted. The lesson in longing, the days following Lyra's confession, transformed into an exquisite education. Marcus proved himself a patient teacher, introducing her to the language that existed beneath words, the vocabulary of touch, proximity, and shared breath. They met in the botanical gardens during the quiet hours when other researchers focused on their work. The privacy allowed Lyra to explore without the weight of Viridian expectations. Marcus understood her need for discretion, never pushing, always allowing her to set the pace. "May I?" he asked one evening, gesturing toward the space beside her on the crystalline bench. Lyra nodded, and he settled close enough that their thighs touched. The contact, though separated by fabric, made her intensely aware of her own body in ways she'd never experienced. Viridians acknowledged physical form as necessary for existence, but they didn't dwell on sensation. Now, every point where she and Marcus connected hummed with awareness. "Tell me what you're feeling," Marcus encouraged, his voice low and soothing. "Warm," Lyra managed. "Nervous, curious, as though every nerve has awakened simultaneously." His hand moved to her shoulder, resting there with gentle weight. "That's desire beginning to bloom. It's not just physical. It's your body's way of expressing what your mind is discovering. That you want to be closer. That connection matters." Lyra turned to face him and found his gaze already on her, intense, appreciative, filled with barely restrained longing that somehow didn't feel threatening. Instead, it felt like invitation. "I want to understand this fully," she said. "Not just intellectually, but experientially." Marcus's hand slid from her shoulder to cup her face, his palm warm against her cheek. Then let's start here. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw. Lyra remained still, heart racing, as the distance between them decreased. When his lips finally met hers, her eyes fluttered closed. The kiss was gentle, exploratory, a question rather than a demand. Marcus's mouth moved against hers with careful attention, teaching her the rhythm, the give and take. Lyra felt herself melting into the sensation, her logical mind quieting as her body took over, responding instinctively to this new form of communication. When they parted, Lyra's breath came faster. That was just the beginning, Marcus promised. He threaded his fingers through hers, bringing their joined hands to rest between them. Intimacy is a conversation, Lyra. It has its own grammar, its own syntax. Each touch, each kiss, each moment of closeness adds to what we're saying to each other. Over the following evenings, Marcus expanded her vocabulary. He showed her how fingertips trailing down her arm could make her shiver, how his breath against her neck could draw soft sounds she'd never made before, how sitting in his lap, feeling his arms encircle her waist, created a sense of safety and excitement simultaneously. In the secluded corner of the gardens, surrounded by flowers that bloomed only in darkness, Lyra experienced revelation. Marcus kissed her more deeply, his tongue gently seeking entrance, introducing her to tastes and textures that made her head spin. His hands explored respectfully her back, her waist, the curve where her neck met her shoulder, each touch building on the last. "You're beautiful when you let go," Marcus murmured against her lips. "When you stop faking and just feel." Lyra pulled back slightly, her analytical mind struggling to reconcile with her awakening body. Is it always this? Overwhelming? With the right person, yes. His thumb brushed her lower lip tenderly. Desire isn't something to master, Lyra. It's something to experience, to share, to let guide you into deeper connection. She kissed him again, this time initiating, applying what he'd taught her. Marcus responded with restrained enthusiasm, letting her explore at her pace while his own want remained carefully controlled. Lyra felt that control, recognized the gift of his patience, and something new bloomed inside her, not just desire, but trust, gratitude, the beginnings of something that felt profound. The dance of discovery. Marcus's quarters were simpler than Viridian dwellings, less crystalline geometry, more soft textures and warm lighting. When Lyra arrived that evening, her hands trembled slightly as she activated the door chime. She'd made this choice consciously, deliberately. Ready to explore the depths of what had been growing between them, Marcus answered immediately, his expression shifting from welcome to something deeper when he saw her. "Come in," he said quietly, stepping aside. The space felt intimate, designed for comfort rather than efficiency. Soft music played from somewhere, human melodies that rose and fell like breathing. Marcus had dimmed the lights to a gentle glow that reminded Lyra of their garden meetings. "I've been thinking," Lyra began, then paused, searching for words. "About everything you've shown me. About desire and connection. I want ... more." Marcus crossed to her slowly, giving her time to change her mind. When he reached her, his hands came to rest on her waist. "Are you certain?" "There's no rush, Lyra. We can continue as we have been." "I'm certain," she said, surprised by the conviction in her voice. "I trust you, and I want to know what it means to be truly close to someone." He kissed her then, deeply, pouring weeks of restrained longing into the contact. Lyra responded with newfound confidence, her arms winding around his neck, her body pressing against his. She felt his heartbeat accelerate, matching her own racing pulse. Marcus's hands moved with reverent exploration, skimming along her sides, learning her contours through the fabric of her robes. "May I?" he asked, fingers finding the clasps that held her outer garment. "Yes," Lyra breathed. He undressed her slowly, treating each revealed bit of skin like a treasure. His lips followed the path of his hands, kissing her shoulders, the hollow of her throat, the sensitive skin along her collarbone. Lyra's head fell back, soft sounds escaping as sensation overwhelmed thought. "You're exquisite," Marcus murmured against her skin. "Every part of you." They moved to his sleeping platform, a tangle of limbs and searching mouths. Lyra helped him remove his own clothing, curious and eager, discovering that touching him brought its own pleasure. His sharp intake of breath when her fingers traced certain paths, the way his muscles tensed beneath her palms, these reactions fascinated her. Showed her that this exchange wasn't one-sided. Marcus laid her back gently. Hovering above her, his weight supported on his arms. "Tell me if anything feels wrong," he said. "This should be pleasurable for both of us." What followed was a dance of discovery, patient, playful, intensely intimate. Marcus showed her rhythms her body instinctively understood, building sensations that crescendoed and cascaded through her. Lyra learned that vulnerability could be strength, that surrender didn't mean loss of self but expansion of it. Their bodies found a language more eloquent than any words they'd exchanged. In moments of pause, they explored with curious hands and whispered questions. Marcus taught her about masculine response, about the reciprocal nature of pleasure. Lyra discovered she enjoyed making him lose his careful control, drawing groans and gasps that matched her own. The experience transcended mere physical sensation. Lyra felt something fundamental shift inside her, recognition that intimacy of this depth created bonds logic alone could never forge. When pleasure finally crested for both of them, leaving them breathless and intertwined, Lyra understood what poets had been attempting to capture all along. That was. She began, still trying to process. Marcus brushed damp hair from her face, his smile tender. "Beyond words?" "Yes," she laughed softly, the sound free and unguarded. "Precisely that." They lay tangled together as Viridian's moons rose outside the window, casting silver light across their joined forms. Marcus traced idle patterns on her skin while Lyra's mind worked to integrate this new dimension of herself, the passionate being who existed alongside the philosopher. "I never understood," she said quietly, "how people could describe love as both finding yourself and losing yourself simultaneously. Now I do." Marcus pressed a kiss to her temple. "And what do you think?" "I think," Lyra replied, turning to meet his eyes, "that some truths can only be learned through experience. And I'm grateful you were patient enough to teach me." The integration, the Viridian Council, Chamber's geometric perfection had always represented everything Lyra valued about her culture order. Precision, logical beauty. Now, standing before her colleagues with her controversial research proposal, she saw it differently. The crystalline walls weren't cold. They were simply incomplete, reflecting only one spectrum of existence. "You wish to propose integrating emotional studies into our educational framework?" Council Elder Theon's tone carried skepticism. "On what basis?" Lyra activated her presentation, images and data flowing across holographic displays. "On the basis that complete understanding requires both intellectual and emotional dimensions. My research with the human visitors has demonstrated that what we've dismissed as excessive emotion actually provides access to forms of knowledge unavailable through logic alone." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Lyra spotted Marcus in the observation gallery, his presence lending her courage. They'd prepared for resistance, knowing that challenging centuries of Viridian philosophy wouldn't be easy. "Emotion clouds judgment," another council member argued. "This is established fact." "Is it?" Lyra countered. "Or have we simply never learned to integrate both modes of understanding?" Humans demonstrate daily that emotional intelligence and intellectual rigor can coexist, even enhance each other. Their greatest scientific breakthroughs often come from passionate curiosity, not cold calculation. She presented case studies, careful research, documented observations. But she also spoke from personal experience, describing how embracing emotional connection had expanded rather than limited her understanding. The chamber fell silent as she concluded. Change is difficult, Lyra acknowledged, but growth requires us to examine even our most fundamental assumptions. I'm not suggesting we abandon logic. I'm proposing we become more complete. The council voted to table the proposal for further study, not acceptance, but not rejection either. As Lyra left the chamber, Marcus met her in the corridor, pulling her into a quick embrace despite the public setting. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. "I was terrified," Lyra admitted, "but also certain. That's your influence teaching me that conviction and vulnerability aren't opposites." They walked to their favorite spot in the botanical gardens where this journey had truly begun. The bioluminescent flowers glowed in familiar patterns, but Lyra saw them with new eyes, appreciating their beauty not just as biological efficiency, but as something that stirred feeling. That created connection between observer and observed. "Some of my colleagues approached me afterward," Lyra said, settling into Marcus's arms on their usual bench, quietly, away from the council. "They're curious. A few admitted they've always felt something was missing from our approach but didn't have language for it." Marcus's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing with practiced ease. "You're starting a revolution, one conversation at a time." "We're starting a revolution," Lyra corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you, without what we've shared." The implications of "we" hung in the air, the question of futures and logistics, of whether their connection could survive beyond his research assignment. Marcus seemed to sense her thoughts. "I've been offered an extended position," he said carefully, "to continue cultural exchange work here. If I accept, it would be indefinite." Lyra's heart leaped, that organ she'd once considered merely functional now a source of profound feeling. "And would you accept?" Marcus turned her to face him, his expression serious and tender simultaneously. "That depends. I came to Viridian Prime to study your culture, but I found something far more valuable. I found you, Lyra. I found us. If you want me to stay, if you want to keep building this together, then yes. I'd accept in a heartbeat." Tears gathered in Lyra's eyes, another human response she'd learned to embrace rather than suppress. "I want that. I want you. I want everything we can discover together." Their kiss tasted of joy and promise, of passion that had been awakened and would continue growing. When they parted, Lyra rested her forehead against his, breathing in sync. "You know what I've learned?" she said softly. Conversation was never enough. Words are beautiful, essential, but they're incomplete. True connection requires all of us, mind, body, heart. The spoken and the unspoken. The logical and the felt. "And which do you prefer?" Marcus asked, echoing their early conversations. Lyra smiled, that expression coming easily now, naturally. "I prefer both. I prefer everything. I prefer this us together, complete." As Viridian's 3 suns set beyond the crystalline spires, painting the sky in colors that defied logical description, Lyra and Marcus sat entwined. 2 beings from different worlds who had created something entirely new between them. A synthesis of intellect and passion, reason and desire, words and the profound silence of perfect understanding. The future stretched before them, uncertain but luminous, filled with possibilities that could only be explored together. And for the first time in her carefully ordered life, Lyra welcomed the beautiful chaos of love, that force which transcended logic, defied categorization, and made everything, absolutely everything, worthwhile. The end.